Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome. Monday, October the 9th, 2023. TDC is officially back after the bye week. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Very excited to be back. South Carolina returning to action this week. Of course, it is Florida week. Very excited for the Gators to come to Williams-Brice Stadium. Also, of course, a packed slate of SEC action. And again, guys, it feels great to be back in the saddle and be chatting with each and every single one of you. I see Dave Garrick, Peyton Smith, Brendan, Travis, Xavier, Ethan. What's going on? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel. The TDC Questions channel, that is where your questions can or will be answered. Either way, guys, again, really excited to chat here on this Monday. We're going to go ahead and kick things over, bring on our good friend. He joins us every single Monday to talk all things, not just Gamecocks, of course, but SEC football as a whole, and does a fantastic job doing it on a week-in, week-out basis. Our good friend, Chris Doering of the SEC Network. He now joins the show. Chris, what's going on, my friend? Great to chat with you once again. How are you?
Yeah, good to be back with you, Chris. And, man, exciting week here with my alma mater taking on y'all's Gamecocks. So we'll try not to get nasty here. But I think it's a rivalry it's fun, man, and looking forward to seeing if Florida can go on the road and play with a little bit more composure than they have in the first two trips.
For sure, Chris. It's a big week for us all, and we'll definitely get to that later in the show. But first, I want to jump to this week 6. And it's crazy, Chris, to think we are officially at the halfway point of the 2023 college football regular season, which is just crazy how it flies by. But I want to start with this, the Alabama and Texas A&M game that took place in week 6, and we'll dive into all of the week 6 action. But ironically enough, Chris, I'm scrolling social media just before I jump on this conversation with you, and what do I see? Barstool, Alabama, and some others having some fun with you at your expense because you took Texas A&M, as did I, by the way. I picked the Aggies in this game, thought at Kyle Field and College Station they'd get the job done. Either way, though, Bama with the big 26-20 victory over Texas A&M. And obviously, Alabama fans, they kept receipts of everyone saying maybe the dynasty was dead or that Texas A&M was going to win this football game. So just talk about that game. What did you see from Alabama? Obviously, it was a huge game through the air for Jalen Milroe. And I feel like we're all sitting here on this Monday saying, shame on me for doubting Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide once again.
Yeah, it's a good point. And certainly they do not let you forget that you pick against them. I don't know a more sensitive fan base that doesn't like being picked against more than Alabama does. But, I had doubts, Chris. I had doubt heading into the season about the quarterback position like we all did. I had doubts about their offensive line. I had doubts about their receivers. And all three of those position groups were part of the reason why they won the game on Saturday. I thought they were going to have a tough time against Texas A&M's front seven, which they did in the first half. But the offensive line did allow them to take some shots, had some time to stand in there and make some throws down the field. Milroe was harassed a lot, particularly in that first half, but give him a lot of credit for standing in there and throwing the football 33 times in that game. And Jermaine Burton, his best game as an Alabama Crimson Tide wide receiver, I thought he single-handedly ate up that Texas A&M secondary. So I'm really impressed with that side of the ball. That was more of a surprise to me than I think I expected. But what was not a surprise was the defense. And this defense continues to get better and better every single week. I love the way the pass rush is kind of married with the secondary. The secondary also has done a nice job in run support. Malachi Moore has been really good there at Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. So this looks like one of the best units in the country when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. And I just, like you said, every time we want to throw some dirt on that grade, they remind us that they're not quite dead yet.
Chris, what does this do, or where does this put Texas A&M in your mind and the whole Jimbo Fisher thing? Because I feel like that game on Saturday was one, like that's why Jimbo was hired to win a game like that. And if, we talked about a couple of weeks ago for Ole Miss, if not now, then when. I mean, this felt like a great opportunity to take advantage of a down, quote unquote, down Alabama team. Maybe the dynasty or what have you is slipping. What do you think this means for Jimbo Fisher? I mean, I have to think the pressure now with 2 losses. I mean, the pressure is immense. Obviously, most folks in the preseason I thought were saying he can't go worse than 9-3 or certainly 8-4 and feel any sort of security. Like, where do you sit right now with Jimbo and the Aggies?
Yeah, I think it shows kind of what the ceiling is for the program as it is right now. I mean, they have an Alabama Crimson Tide problem, and they can't get over that hurdle. And if you can't get over that hurdle, you're not going to get a chance to play in the SEC championship game. And it only gets more difficult next year with Texas and Oklahoma coming to the conference. So, I did agree with you that this was kind of the best chance that they had with Alabama having some susceptibility seemingly and having that game in College Station. But they let a perfect opportunity to get away. And you go back to a couple different points. The offensive line struggled blocking Alabama, particularly in the second half with 4 sacks. It felt like everything was hard. Everything was difficult for them in moving the ball. They hit a couple explosive plays. But I thought the game changed early on when you weren't able to take advantage of the red zone opportunities. You get down there twice in the first quarter. You only come away with 3 points in those 2 trips. On the day, you only score 13 points on 4 red zone trips. You have to be able to score when you have those opportunities against Alabama, and you have to be able to hit some big plays. And they just didn't have enough of those to be able to overcome how good that Alabama defense was, particularly in the second half.
Chris, to Columbia, Missouri, LSU rattles off 22 fourth quarter points to outlast Mizzou 49-39. This one was a fun ball game, man. I mean, just back and forth, tons of offense. If you like offense, this was the game for you. Jaden Daniels throwing for 259, 3 touchdowns. Brady Cook threw for 411, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and also Daniels running for 130 yards. Logan Diggs getting the LSU running game really going, 24 carries for 134. Cody Schrader having some success on the ground for Mizzou. I mean, it was a lot of offensive fireworks. Luther Burden, ho-hum, 11 catches, 149. I think he's becoming probably one of your favorite players, Chris,
Yeah.
just watching an explosive wide receiver do work on a weekly basis, truly.
Mm-hmm.
But LSU wins the football game. I thought a really just gritty and gutsy win on the road against a red-hot Mizzou team.
Yeah, a must-have win for LSU too, and it looked like it was going to go the other way. I mean, they're down 22-7 early in the first half. They get the interception. You mentioned Brady Cook's numbers. Threw the ball really well, except for 2 passes, and it cost them. Those 2 passes, 14 points that LSU was able to get off of those 2 turnovers after Brady Cook had thrown 365 passes without an interception. So ironically, that's one of the big reasons why it cost them the game. And honestly, we're talking about defense in a game that was mostly about the offenses. I thought LSU kind of figured some things out in the second half defensively. 8 possessions for Missouri, only 2 touchdowns allowed. So I thought that they got better on that side of the ball. But we can't say enough about Jaden Daniels. He's just been fantastic this season. Every week I come on here and tell you I think he should be in the Heisman Trophy talk. I think those guys are the guys that play the best when the chips are down in the most important parts of the game. He throws for 89 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter, runs for another 65 yards, including 2 big third down runs that he had. 3rd and 9, he runs for 14 yards. 3rd and 3, he runs for the 35-yard touchdown. So I thought that he was fantastic at the most crucial point in time. But I think you're learning about teams that have been there before. Alabama, when they need it, they're able to draw on that experience. LSU, when they needed it, were able to draw on that experience. And you mentioned the 22 fourth quarter points. I think Drink kind of alluded to it earlier in the season that they were not closing ball games out. And when you're a team that is trying to ascend to a level you haven't been before, sometimes you don't know how to win those close games when you need to. And I think that's what showed there, the lack of experience versus LSU having experience in those late game situations.
Chris, it's kind of funny how we spend so much time over the offseason, beginning of the season, talking about, Alabama's decline, if you will, and maybe Texas A&M, maybe Ole Miss, maybe Arkansas. And it just feels like, Chris, more and more like it looks like it's going to come down to the LSU-Alabama game just like we all thought it would. Like, it's just all paths are kind of leading to that game in Tuscaloosa, it seems. It's just kind of funny how things work themselves out. Speaking of working themselves out to Athens, Georgia, Chris, where, I had a feeling that the Dogs were going to remind everyone just how good they were and that, quiet some of that chatter that Georgia's not the best team in college football. And maybe you can still have the argument when you factor in Ohio State and Michigan. But again, Georgia reminded folks that they are still Georgia, still kings of the mountain, a 51-13 drubbing of, Chris, I'd still say a solid Kentucky team. I think people want to throw shade on Kentucky today and say they're no good. And I understand the schedule was soft early, but I still think that's a very capable Kentucky team. And I mean, they dismantled them. And Carson Beck, continues to play well, 389 yards through the air. They totally shut down Ray Davis. Your thoughts on the back-to-back national champions and what you thought of their performance on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it took somebody getting their attention before they really came out with a focused effort. And a lot of people were talking about Kentucky being, a team that could challenge in the East. The problem is it's a bad matchup for Kentucky. You're trying to out Georgia, and you're not going to be the more physical team than what Georgia is. Kirby will never let that happen. The problem for Kentucky is they don't have the complement of the pass game. And that's one of the biggest head scratchers of the season so far is like you bring in Devin Leary, who's had a ton of success at North Carolina State. Liam Cohen's back. You got this trio of receivers that's amongst the best that you've ever had in Kentucky, and yet you can't get the passing game going. Only 10 completions of 26 attempts. Very limited success there. So without hitting big plays, you have to hit big plays in the passing game to be able to beat Alabama, to be able to beat Georgia. And Kentucky just didn't have enough of that. The surprising part to me was how their defense was filleted, though. I really believed in this defense for Kentucky. And to see Carson Beck come out and just systematically dissect them, the first 6 drives of the game ended in points for the Dogs. And for everybody out there complaining about the slow starts, they certainly answered that question.
Chris, let's switch things up a bit and go to Oxford, Mississippi. And I don't know if I have a soft spot for Arkansas or what. I expected Ole Miss to win this football game, and I'm really concerned about Sam Pittman and his future in Fayetteville. And I know he's an Arkansas guy, and so, maybe there's nothing to worry about. But this Dan Enos offense thing, it's not working. I mean, you look at the numbers. Rocket Sanders, 8 carries for 15 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. And it gets no easier for them, right? Like the back half of the schedule softens up, but they've got Alabama this week. Like, do you see, is there light at the end of the tunnel for Arkansas that doesn't include getting rid of Sam Pittman?
I hope they don't, because I'm like you. I like Coach Pittman a lot. I think he's a great fit there. I think he's a victim of his own success to some degree. I think that program was in shambles when he took it over from Chad Morris. And I think they had too much success too soon to where the bar got unrealistically set high. Right now, their biggest issue is offensive line. And that's ironic to say, given Sam Pittman's background as an offensive line coach his entire career. But they can't get the passing game going because they can't protect KJ. They can't get the run game going as you alluded to with Rockets' numbers this year. Just really frustrating to watch. Now, I thought they came out with great effort, and they certainly have improved defensively where they were really bad against the pass last year. They did a nice job of limiting Ole Miss's success. They didn't have the big explosive plays that they did against LSU last week. But in the fourth quarter, when Ole Miss needed it, they started putting it together, rushed for over 100 yards in that quarter alone, 4 of 6 on third down, so started to have some success converting where they hadn't. They were 0 of 8 in the first 3 quarters. So Ole Miss pulled it out when they needed to, and I think in this league, it's tough to win. So especially coming off a big victory like they had last week, survive and advance is the important part when you're playing this conference schedule that you're in the midst of right now.
Now, Chris, we moved to Gainesville, and of course, this will segue us into the Week 7 slate because Florida, ho-hum, able to get a big victory over the Vanderbilt Commodores, 38-14, a pretty dominating performance. You look at the scoreboard from start to finish. The Florida rushing attack, Montrell Johnson was fantastic, 18 for 135, 7.5 yards per carry, and a touchdown. Also, Webb at the running back position, 4 for 70. He was really good. Ricky Pearsall getting involved. Graham Mertz was efficient, 30 of 36, 254, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, the big part. Gators did allow 276 through the air, but all in all, I would say the type of confidence-building performance you want coming into Williams-Brice Stadium for this game against the Gamecocks. By the way, I do want to point out, because I watched, Chris, the highlights this morning, and Boardingham, the tight end, this dude was all over the place. 7 catches for 99 yards, 2 touchdowns as well. And again, Ricky Pearsall had a solid day. So Florida gets the W. What did you like that you saw? And then looking ahead to this game against South Carolina, this is a huge game, I think, for both sides. I called it the most important game of South Carolina's 2023 season over the summer in regards to reaching their goals, a.k.a. getting to 7 or maybe even 8 wins. And then for Florida, I feel like for Billy Napier and company, it's about they can put together a complete performance on the road for whatever reason away from the Swamp. They have not been able to, and it's tough to win on the road, but they've had virtually no success. Talk about Florida's win over Vandy briefly, and then how you think that carries over. Does that carry any big momentum into this game at Williams-Brice Stadium this weekend?
Yeah, you mentioned, Chris, that it's hard to win in the SEC. It's hard to win on the road. It's even harder when you're shooting yourself in the foot the way that Florida has when they've gone on the road. So I think it's important that they play cleanly like they did against Vanderbilt on Saturday. They bounced back after getting dominated on the lines of scrimmage by Kentucky, by dominating Vanderbilt. They rushed for over 250 yards as a team, limited Vanderbilt to under 60 yards rushing. So this was a solid defensive performance. Really continue to be impressed with Austin Armstrong and the job that he's done. You go back and look at that Kentucky game. He had them in some really good calls, but the execution wasn't there. So nice to see them be able to play with a little bit more attention to detail. Hopefully for Florida fans, they can go on the road and have a little bit better performance than they did in Lexington or in Salt Lake City in the opener. But I think it was an important one to get their confidence back and an important one to get some positive momentum. I do think that they built up a little bit of momentum heading to Columbia, but my lasting memory is that debacle there that 2 years ago that led to Dan Mullen's firing. So hopefully Florida can play better in that one. But, I think it's an interesting time for them catching South Carolina coming off a bye week where, you get a chance to catch your breath, and Florida hasn't quite had the ability to do that yet.
Chris, I know Graham Mertz is no Joe Milton, but the game plan defensively, and I think the matchup of this ball game is very similar actually to that Tennessee game where, Chris, I think the Gamecocks have got to find a way to slow down that Gator rushing attack and put this ball game on Graham Mertz. Outside of that, what are the major matchups you're looking for? I mean, obviously you have to account for Spencer Rattler, Xavier Legette. They've got their own issues, though. I mean, Carolina fans right now, Chris, are scratching their heads wondering what version of this Gamecocks football team are they going to get? And I think the question right now is, okay, this is a 2-3 team, but 3 losses to ranked opponents. So who is this team really, right? Is this going to be the punching bag in the SEC East this year? Or is there hope that the Gamecocks can turn it on second half of the season? But when you look at this game, I mean, what are the most intriguing matchups that stand out to you on both sides of the football?
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of the importance of the positioning in the SEC East for both of these teams, kind of in the middle, bunched up right now. I think that one of the matchups that I'm most intrigued by is Florida's run defense against South Carolina. Seem to have found something here recently with their run game, but outside of the loss to Kentucky, Florida has been really good against the run. So I think that's an interesting dynamic. And Florida, they need to find a way to stretch the field a little bit more with their passing game. Graham Mertz is throwing for 80% completion percentage right now, but they're not really throwing the ball downfield as much as I'd like to see. So we did see Mississippi State take advantage of South Carolina's secondary. Tennessee also had some success throwing the football against them. So I'd like to see if Florida can complement the run with a little bit of the downfield vertical passing game.
Now, Chris, I don't want you to be coy here. Favorite memory playing against the Gamecocks? I know you had some good ones.
Yeah, I would say, playing up there in 95, it was an interesting – we had a night game. Steve Tannehill was the quarterback for the Gamecocks back then. And we were in the hotel room, and a massive storm came through, knocked out the power in the hotel. And then it got freezing cold, man. And so that night, it was one of the coldest games that I can remember in my college career. It was kind of windy as well. I think Coach Spurrier was a little worried about our ability to throw, and we went up and down the field. I caught a touchdown in the back of the end zone right before halftime, went up. Danny and I used to, on Fridays, we'd throw the ball in the back of the end zone, kind of running the end line there and throwing it up high. And we actually got a chance to execute it in that game, came down with 1 foot in the end zone. So it was one of my favorite catches as a Gator, and happened in one of my favorite environments there in Williams-Brice.
Good memories for you, not so many good memories when the Gamecocks took on Steve Spurrier in the 90s. That is for sure. Looking at this Week 7 slate, Chris, the big one that jumps out, we just talked about South Carolina, Florida, but Tennessee hosting Texas A&M in that same time slot, a 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Big game for both sides, goes without saying, but for Texas A&M going on the road, man, 2 losses, and that seat is warm. 3 losses, and things are really going to start to heat up. And on the Tennessee side, they come off the bye week looking to get things rolling. Your thoughts on this match? I mean, I think this is going to be one of the more fun games of the weekend in the college football slate to watch.
Yeah, really excited about this game because of the dynamics on the lines of scrimmage. Florida was able to kind of own the line of scrimmage against Tennessee, and this is going to be a big challenge for Tennessee's run game, one of the best teams in the conference when it comes to running the football up against the front seven that is really stout for Texas A&M. They got some dudes up front, and watching Walter Nolan and Shamar Stewart, you look at what they've been able to do with penetration in the run game, So this is a game that I think if I had to pick right now, probably would lean towards Texas A&M. But what kind of mood are they in? How are they feeling after that disappointing loss? Are they able to turn the page and bounce back here? But just from the physical standpoint, I don't know if Tennessee is going to be able to block them up front.
To the rest of the slate, we go Kentucky, Mizzou, LSU, Auburn. You got Bama, Arkansas as well. Chris, what jumps out from you from those games? I mean, my attention directly goes to that matchup of SEC East foes in UK and Missouri. I think we're going to learn a lot about each of those two football teams. And then the other two, I think, potential upset bids. I think this is a great spot for Hugh Freeze and Auburn to go into Death Valley and make some noise. But what jumps out to you? What intrigues you the most, I guess you should say, at the halfway point of the SEC slate going into this weekend?
Yeah, I think the Kentucky Missouri game is the one that kind of pops off. Although it loses a little bit of its luster with both teams losing last week. But again, I think it's a huge positioning game in the SEC East. I in the preseason really believed in Kentucky and kind of have gone all in on them again. But this is a game that they have to win if they want to get to 10 wins, which I think is a plausible possibility. They've got to find a way to win this one at home. I thought that Missouri's defense, as I mentioned earlier, certainly let them down. So it'll be interesting to see how Kentucky attacks them. LSU really chose to run the football at them a lot early and often. They were the number one rush defense in the conference heading in, and LSU kind of had their way with them. So I'm interested to see what Ray Davis can do against this defense if they're able to provide a little bit more resistance against Kentucky's run game.
Chris, better chance at the upset. Auburn over LSU or Arkansas over Bama. Both these games are on the road for those respective opponents.
I would say Auburn over LSU. I don't think Arkansas has the chance at all. With as bad as that offensive line is, I feel bad for KJ and Rocket this week trying to do anything. But I do think with LSU, it's going to be a fun matchup between a pretty good Auburn defense and an LSU offense that's been unstoppable. The question will be, it's the other sides of the ball. Auburn's offense has been pretty bad, and LSU's certainly has been forgettable. But as I mentioned, I do think they figured some things out on the defensive side. And, I expect both of the favorites to win those games. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be the Auburn upset, a little more likely than Arkansas winning against Bama.
Chris, appreciate you taking the time as always. Last thing before I get you out of here. Have you ever seen anything like what we saw in that Miami game on Saturday night?
No, I heard this, and I don't know if it's true. You probably remember, but they said Mario Cristobal had a similar instance occur in Oregon where he could have taken a knee, ran the ball, fumbled it, and lost the game. So you would have thought that you'd have learned something from that, but just inexcusable. I feel bad for the players because the players deserve better. They deserve to have somebody that understands, how to put you in the best position to win a football game. Obviously, that kid feels terrible, but it should never have been in his hands. And even after you fumble it, how do you let a receiver get behind 3 defenders with 2 seconds left in the game? I mean, that in itself is inexcusable as well.
Chris, last thing as we enter the second half, again, it feels crazy to say that, the second half of this season, I feel like, and I want you to speak on this as a former player, these first 6 or 7 games, it's about kind of getting your feet under you, figuring out who you are. This kind of feels like the point we start to see teams separate and your upper tier, your lower tier, maybe some in the middle as well. But, I think it's going to be fascinating to see if teams like a Tennessee, like a Texas A&M, South Carolina or Florida, Kentucky or Mizzou, as we learn more about these teams, I feel like this is where you're going to really know about, okay, does that offensive scheme work? What are they doing defensively? Like, who is this coach? Was this the right hire? Just speak on that. Again, I think we're going to really start to learn more as we continue to go again, especially being at the halfway point. Now the second half where some teams turn it on and some teams seem to fold.
Yeah, I think this is where depth comes into play, right? I mean, you're in the middle of the grind, going through the SEC season. You're physically and mentally tired. You got some injuries. A lot of teams dealing with that right now. Mississippi State's really banged up. Ole Miss is banged up as well. So it's really going to be a test for the longevity and the conditioning of these teams as they get into the second half of the season. But I think you're right. I mean, I think we're already seeing a little of that separation. It seems inevitable that we're going to have Alabama and Georgia meeting again in Atlanta that first weekend of December. But can those two teams stay healthy? Can they run the rest of the way unbeaten? Georgia. It's kind of ironic here. We're not even to the second week of October yet. We only have one undefeated team. I think that speaks to the parity in this conference and parity nationally. But if anything, we've learned so far is that it's a very even kind of conference this year, and so I expect to see some crazy upsets as we finish out the rest of the way.
Chris Doering of SEC Network joins us every Monday and does a fantastic job. Chris, appreciate taking the time, and best of luck to the Gators this weekend. Not too much. It'll be a lot of fun chatting with you about it on Monday next week.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Have a great week.
Yeah, man, you too. We'll talk soon. Great stuff, guys, from our good friend Chris Doering of SEC Network. Does a great job. And, of course, a Florida alum. So this week will be a ton of fun for he and I both. Let the trash talking commence. Guys, that being said, we are going to jump into a quick break. On the side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Monday, October the 9th. All that and more on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
That's your Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we're back here on this Monday, October the 9th, 2023. Let me say thank you all so much for the continued love and support. I hope you guys all enjoyed your bye week. It was a fantastic time for yours truly, hanging out in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We had a blast just decompressing a bit. Still paid attention, obviously, to the SEC football. Great games over the weekend, but being able to take in the cool mountain air and hang out over the weekend. Again, hope you guys enjoyed it as well. With that being said, got a jam-packed show, lot to get into, and a packed slate of SEC games this weekend. Guys, also, if you want your questions answered here on this Monday, you can leave us a super chat on YouTube, or for those in the Big Cock Club Discord, leave your questions in the TDC Questions channel, and we'll get to those throughout the show. If you'd like to join the Big Cock Club, patreon.com/Big Cock Club. You'll get access to the Discord as well as many, many more perks there. So join today, patreon.com/Big Cock Club. Guys, that being said, I want to switch things up a little bit here on this Monday as we enter Florida week and put the bye week behind us. South Carolina is 14-2 coming off of a bye since 2009, and they are 2-0 under Shane Beamer. Those two wins being in 2021, the Gamecocks took down Florida by a final score of 40-17 at Williams-Brice Stadium. And then last year, Carolina downing Texas A&M in a fun back-and-forth game. Again, of course, both of those victories coming off of the bye week. So we've seen South Carolina make significant improvements and play some of their best football when they have extra time to prepare. So on that note, the top 5 things that I feel we most need to see from the Gamecocks following this bye week. Where do the significant improvements need to happen, and what needs to take place? What signs of progress do we most need to see coming out of the bye week? So these are my top 5. And at number 1, guys, we go straight to the offensive line. South Carolina, believe it or not, is on pace to surrender 59 sacks this season. That is almost hard to comprehend, guys. Truly, that's almost hard to comprehend. 59 sacks is what South Carolina is on pace to allow. Also, we know, although there's been an emergence of Mario Anderson, and if you looked at the Tennessee numbers, you'd say, okay, the rushing game's improving, but then you factor in 75 yards on one of those carries. You take that away, it was another typical Gamecocks rushing performance. Offensive line continuity and just overall improvement from that starting 5. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the impact of starting 2 true freshmen on the offensive line, right? Big Tree Babalade and Trovon Bowe. And certainly, those guys should be in the lineup, right? They're 2 of your best 5. They may be freshmen, they may be inexperienced, but when it comes to pure overall talent, those are 2 dudes who should be in the lineup. And the issues with the offensive line, the deficiencies, if you will, they have been preached on and harped on and talked about ad nauseum at this point. But at some point, it's time for this offensive line to start clicking. And no, I don't mean paving the way for a 200 or 250-yard rushing day or surrendering even 0 sacks in a ball game, but making improvements week over week over week. The starting 5 starting to gel together and show real continuity, right? Because you get to a point, especially late in the season, guys, and we talked about the advantages of playing guys like Big Tree Babalade and Trovon Bowe and getting truly your best 5 out there. It was going to be baptism by fire early. You were going to put some guys in some very uncomfortable situations, right? But you get down that last stretch of the season, the second half, if you will, that final 4-game stretch, all 4 games at Williams-Brice Stadium. Hey, You get 4 or 5 games under your belt, you're really not a true freshman anymore. Like, you've been through the battles, you've been through the tests, you should be ready to go and good enough to be productive and be a positive addition for South Carolina, or be at least hold your own on that offensive front. We need to start seeing signs of that against Florida. Now, I know Austin Armstrong and that Florida defense, they have been stingy against the run this season. They've been really, really good. It will be a challenge for the Gamecocks yet again to run the football and keep Spencer Rattler upright. But in a week in which, in a game in which you've had 2 weeks to get ready, I could argue we should see the greatest jump for South Carolina's offensive line from that Tennessee game to this Florida game. The offensive line's got to start to gel. They've got to put it together, or this season is going to lose hope of being successful very, very quickly. The second thing we need to see coming out of the bye week, guys, a defensive identity. And I know that is a damning thing to be wishing for when you are in year 3 of your defensive coordinator and you don't know what the identity is defensively. Because in the past, here's the thing that most folks don't want to admit to themselves. This defense hasn't really been all that great for any part of the Shane Beamer tenure. Shane Beamer era. I can't spit it out. I'm so passionate today. The defense hasn't been great for most of the Shane Beamer era. But the first 2 years, what was the identity of the defense? It's been opportunistic play and forcing turnovers. And you hate to call anything smoke and mirrors, but forcing those turnovers and getting the football off of people has really masked a lot of the defensive issues and the defensive deficiencies. Well, now those turnovers aren't quite coming at the same rate. And maybe what's more alarming, it's not like you're getting 0 turnovers. You may not be getting those game-changing turnovers, those momentum-changing turnovers, but you're still getting some. You got 2 picks off Joe Milton, and you still could not do anything with it. We saw the Gamecocks against Mississippi State sell out on stopping the run, and it worked. Granted, Will Rogers had a lot of success through the air, but you stopped the run, which was your number 1 priority. Then the next week against Tennessee, instead of sticking with that and making Joe Milton beat you, you played soft, you played off, and you let Tennessee run for over 230 yards in the defense. The question is just, who are you? What are you? What is this defense? What is this defense good at? Because at least in years past, you could lean on a competent secondary. You could lean on a secondary that was one of the better secondaries in the SEC. I mean, now you have nothing, guys. Now you have nothing to work with, it feels like. Do we finally start to see some sense of an identity from this defense? Are we going to be able to leave this game against Florida and say, okay, this is this defense's strength. This is what this defense wants to do. This is what this defense is good at. Because right now, it feels like you're playing guesswork out there. It feels like you're guessing. You're grasping at straws. You don't really know what you're doing. And if you have another porous performance defensively, if you cannot get Florida off the field this weekend, I know many of you out there do not like or get uncomfortable at the whole Clayton White chatter, but that seat is going to go from warm to scorching hot if the defense can't show marketed improvement coming out of the bye week. Guys, my third thing I most want to see coming out of the bye week, more usage of the tight ends. I think we've seen some encouraging signs. Trey Knox in that Tennessee game, I thought he was much more involved. Joshua Simon, in my opinion, guys, is, from what we've been told, is far too good of a player to not be utilized. I mean, all we heard all offseason was, this guy's a freak. This guy's special. He had 7 touchdown catches at Western Kentucky. He's been a non-factor. And we keep asking the question on a week-in, week-out basis, okay, who's stepping up outside of Xavier Legette? Who is going to be that weapon on the outside that takes the pressure off 17 and gives Spencer Rattler another option, another weapon? I don't see why it can't be the tight end position or why it shouldn't be the tight end position. Because with all due respect to Amarian Brown and Eddie Lewis and Omega Blake, I think your best skill position players outside of Legette are your tight ends. Trey Knox and potentially Joshua Simon as well. So I think getting them more involved, I think it could also help take some of the pressure, some of the heat off of Spencer Rattler. If you're able to get that football out quick to your tight ends and, hit those guys down the seam. I think they could also help you a lot on third down, staying on the field, converting third downs, keeping drives alive. So I want to see the tight ends get more involved. We heard so much in the preseason about Trey Knox and Joshua Simon, how good they were. And I don't know that we've really got the return that we were all expecting, especially from Joshua Simon, who is too good, too talented of a player, too much of a physical specimen not to be more involved in the offensive game plan. So more usage of the tight ends coming out of the bye week. I think that would help this South Carolina offense, help this offensive attack immensely going into this game against Florida and beyond. Also, guys, we need to continue to see Beamer ball change games. And listen, I thought special teams, the fake punt in that game against Tennessee, no gripes about special teams in that game. I thought the specialists did all they could. Was there that game-changing play like a kickoff return or a punt return? Not necessarily, but guys, you just can't count on that on a week-in, week-out basis. You just can't do it, right? Like, you got to have something else. You got to be able to go to something else. And, you're not going to have that on a weekly basis. But South Carolina is going to need it. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. There's no way around it. I mean, this is a football team that has deficiencies on both sides of the football. Offensively, defensively, you're going to need special teams to do just like it did last year and flip some games on their heads, whether it be this game against Florida, it be Missouri upcoming in 2 weeks, it'd be Texas A&M at the end of the month, it'd be that final 4-game stretch of all those home games. You're going to need special teams to play a big role. And guys, of course, you think about it too, like there's a good chance you're a favorite against Florida ever so slightly. You're going to be a dog to Mizzou, a dog to Texas A&M, and there's a good chance you're a dog to Kentucky and Clemson in the season. So if you want to get to 7 or 8 wins, special teams has got to show up and show out in a big way for South Carolina and be that game-changing facet of the game that we saw all of last year in the first 2 seasons of the Shane Beamer era. Guys, and the fifth and final thing that I want to see from the Gamecocks following the bye week, and listen, there are so many more things that need to be taken care of, right? There are so many other issues that need to be resolved before we even get to this. But maybe this is a selfish one, but I think I speak for most of Gamecock Nation. Coming out of the bye week, entering week 7 of the 2023 college football season, game 6, week 7, where is Nicholas Harbor? And I want to see Nicholas Harbor on the field in some capacity touching the football. Again, guys, like we mentioned coming out the Tennessee game, you are only going to be able to get away with the excuse of, he's not ready. You can only get away with that for so long, especially when guys, and I won't name names, we had some folks get a little upset last week, but when you got guys trotting out there that for a fact Nicholas Harbor is bigger, faster, and you'd like to think more talented and can make things happen. And we're not saying, has he learned the entire route tree? Is he ready to be an everyday contributor at wide receiver? I don't think so. But if it's as simple as running an end around or catching a screen pass, give it to the 5-star freshman who is an athletic specimen and a freak on the football field. I'm not saying get him 6 to 7 targets a game, but getting the football in Nick Harbor's hands, finding a way to utilize him. I expected it would take this long for Nick Harbor to get his feet under him and start to make an impact. Well, here we are, the halfway point of the 2023 football season. And with all due respect to these other guys, some of these other guys out there doing the very best they can to make an impact, I think Nicholas Harbor is a guy when you look towards not just this season, but the future as well, the future of the wide receiver position. There's a good chance you're leaning on Nick Harbor to be your wide receiver 1 next year. You need to start putting him in some positions where he can make an impact, where he can at least show what he has, have an opportunity to make big plays and to help this football team win games. Again, nobody's saying 5 to 10 targets a game, but touching the football once or twice and starting to get him involved coming out of the bye week. I know that's something Gamecock Nation, including yours truly, wants to see. So again, guys, the top 5 things that I feel we need to see from the Gamecocks following the bye week. Number one, offensive line continuity improvement. Number two, some sort of a defensive identity. Number three, more usage of the tight ends. Number four, Beamer ball continuing to change games. And at number five, the utilization of Nicholas Harbor. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we're going to play Monday morning quarterback and look back on the week that was in the SEC, break down all that action and more. Guys, all that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Macho Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we're back here on this Monday, October the 9th, 2023. Let me say yet again, guys, thank you all so much for the continued love and support. Hope you had a fantastic bye week. It was a lot of fun to get away and, like I said, sort of disconnect a little bit and hang out and, still keep up with some football, but take some time to relax and get some R&R in. And I hope you guys all enjoyed it as well. 7 consecutive games follow for South Carolina, 6 in a row in the SEC, and, of course, the season finale against the Clemson Tigers. And, guys, savor every week. Savor every game because you look up and we're already at the halfway point in regards to the regular season of the 2023 college ball season. It's crazy how time flies, so just make sure you savor every second. And before you know it, man, we'll be in the month of November and looking ahead to Thanksgiving and rivalry weekend, and it's just crazy, again, how time flies when it comes to college football season, guys. That being said, we're going to play a game I like to call Monday Morning Quarterback as we look back at all the action that took place in Week 6, a jam-packed slate, some fantastic games, a weekend that lived up to the billing. We start in Columbia, Missouri. LSU scores 22 fourth-quarter points to get the W. Guys, I thought Mizzou had this one up 22-7 early in this game. Brady Cook was fantastic, 411 yards. LSU's got real issues defensively. I mean, they are historically bad on defense, and I don't know how LSU's defensive coordinator makes it next season. Either way, though, LSU getting the win. Jaden Daniels has been fantastic for them, 15-21. 259 through the air, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Logan Diggs, we're all familiar with that name because, of course, South Carolina wanted him, and he chose LSU instead. 24 for 134, a touchdown, 5.6 yards per carry. How about Jaden Daniels running as well? 15 for 130, 8.7 yards per carry for him. Cody Schrader from Mizzou, 13 for 114, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 8.8 yards per carry. Malik Neighbors for LSU, the best wide receiver in the SEC at this point, guys. 6 for 146, 24 yards per reception, a touchdown as well. And then Luther Burden had a big day, 11 for 149, 13.5. This was a game I took LSU. I took the Tigers -6.5, and they covered. You just felt like, guys, this was one that LSU had to have. And it's crazy to watch, though. Like, this is how LSU is going to have to win football games. They're going to have to outscore people because that defense is flat out terrible. Now, if you want to look for any sort of silver lining, they did only allow 14 second-half points, just 7 points in the fourth quarter when they outscored Mizzou 22-7. But, man, LSU's got real problems defensively. And it's crazy to think about that with a defense that has guys like Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo and Harold Perkins and, some of these other guys. And, I mean, they just can't get a stop. They can't get anybody off of the field. And I know Missouri was red hot going into that game, and we were high on Mizzou going in that one, but still, to give up that many yards and that many points to Missouri, got to be concerning for LSU moving forward. And then, of course, for Mizzou guys, this would have been a nice to win. I don't think this was a must win for Mizzou. That game now comes in this game against Kentucky this weekend. Yes, it's on the road, and we'll break down this thing more so later in the week, but huge game for both sides, and especially from the folks in Como establishing, hey, this might be a battle for who is the second best team in the SEC East, guys. That's really what it comes down to. But a fantastic game in Columbia, Missouri, as LSU, gutsy win on the road. They get the job done. Mississippi State, we move to Starkville. They take down Western Michigan 41-28 in a game that you look at that total for Western Michigan, 28 points surrendered. Is Zach Arnett a one-and-done coach, guys? I have no idea. Will Rogers was efficient, 16-22, 189, and 3 touchdowns. Mike Wright came in 7 for 10, 57 yards, using a little bit of a 2-quarterback system there. Woody Marks just 8 for 38. Davis, their running back, 10 for 65. And a touchdown, a ho-hum performance. I mean, you look, though, Womack for Western Michigan, 12 for 113. He had a good day. Tulu Griffin, 4 for 65 on the day as well. So, a win that Mississippi State need to have. But it's a weird season for State, guys. It's just a weird season. It feels like they're almost like, I don't want to say they're sleepwalking through the season, but it's a hangover season after the unfortunate passing of Mike Leach. Like that's the best way to put it. You know what I mean? Because all Mississippi State fans can think about is what could have been, what should have been, and what isn't because of that. So we move to College Station, guys. Alabama, Texas A&M. Who out there said that Bama's dynasty? Who out there said the Nick Saban run at Bama was dead? Certainly not I, right? Bama continues every week to show us, hey, it's too early to throw dirt on the grave. A 26-20 win. Alabama gets over Texas A&M on the road. Guys, we've talked about it so much this season, how difficult it is to win on the road in the SEC. You look at the numbers, guys. Chris Doering talked about it earlier in our earlier segment. Texas A&M not being able to capitalize in the red zone ends up killing them. Also, Aggies are outscored 16-3 in the second half of their home field. And the big storyline, guys, coming out of this one is Jalen Milroe. 21 for 33, 321 through the air. 3 touchdowns, a pick. A fantastic day. The aerial attack was on point for Alabama. Not able to run the football that great, 12 for 45, 3.8 yards per carry. But the passing attack was absolutely incredible. You look at Jermaine Burton. He was great, 9 for 197 and 2 touchdowns. Bond at the receiver position, 7 for 96. A touchdown as well. The knee black, 1 for 12. I mean, they were great through the air, guys. And then Texas A&M just left picking up the pieces. I mean, I think at this point, if you're a fan of the Aggies, you've got to come to the grips with the fact that Jimbo Fisher ain't it. Like, Jimbo Fisher's not the guy that maybe you thought he was to get you from winning 8 or 9 games to competing realistically in the SEC West. Because I feel like if he was that guy, this is a game Texas A&M wins. This is why you brought Jimbo in. And it was such a gettable Alabama team on your home field, and you still could not take advantage. I know you didn't have Connor Wegman, guys. I get that. I know you didn't have Connor Wegman. Max Johnson went 14 to 25, 239, a touchdown, a pick. Is that game different if you don't have Connor Wegman? Maybe so, but this is why you brought Max Johnson in, to fill in and be that dude just in case. And I don't know, guys. Is that a good enough crutch for Jimbo Fisher to stand on, not having Connor Wegman in that football game? I don't know that it is. So, Alabama looks like they're still a factor in the SEC West. Texas A&M is still a fraud. And it's funny how a couple weeks in, and, we're all talking all summer, it's going to come down to Bama, LSU, and Tuscaloosa. And then after the first couple of weeks, we're thinking, no way, Bama's dead. And now we're back to, hey, it's going to come down to that matchup between the Bayou Bengals and the Crimson Tide in November, and it could end up Bama's right back in Atlanta in the SEC Championship. Who'd have thought? Guys, to Gainesville, the Gamecocks opponent this weekend, Florida takes down Vandy, final score of 38-14. A feel-good, kind of a get-right game for Florida, guys. Dominated this one start to finish. They were up 21-7 at half, outscored Vandy 17-7 in the second half. Again, a real ho-hum type performance. The efficiency from Graham Mertz stands out. 30 for 36, 254 through the air, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. Montrell Johnson was incredible for them, 18 for 135, 7.5 yards per carry, and a touchdown in that football game. We'll talk about it a lot later this week, guys, but that rushing attack against South Carolina's defense, that is the matchup of the ball game. You tell me right now what the numbers are, the rushing numbers are for Florida. I'll tell you who wins that football game. Again, through the air, Boardingham, the tight end, had a really, really good game for them. 7 for 99, 2 touchdowns. Wilson the third, 8 for 64. Ricky Pearsall did his thing as well, both on the ground and receiving. On the Vandy side, too, guys, they've changed quarterbacks. Ken Seals took over under center, was pretty good. 19 to 34, 276, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. But that Florida defense really, really tough against the run. The leading ball carrier for Vanderbilt, Alexander, had just 27 yards on 8 carries, 3.4 yards per attempt. So a dominating performance. In Florida, I think as good a performance as you could hope for coming in this game with South Carolina, what feels like a really pivotal game for both sides, right? I mean, for Florida, they've been a different team away from the swamp. South Carolina has been really good at home, but this kind of feels like a pivotal showdown for the Gamecocks. Which way is their season going to go for Florida? If you're going to get to 7 or 8 wins and have a breakout season, surprise season in year 2 of Billy Napier, it's a game you need to have. So a lot on the line this weekend, but all in all, a really, really nice performance for the Florida Gators at home in the swamp against Vandy. And, of course, the hapless Commodores continue their struggles in SEC play. And as I've mentioned previously, guys, it would really surprise me if we saw Vandy get an SEC win this season. It really would surprise me at this point. To Athens we go. Georgia and Kentucky. And, folks, I told you last week, Georgia was going to remind people why they're ranked number 1 in all of college football, why they're the back-to-back national champions, that they are still at the top of the mountain. And that's exactly what happened. A 51-13 drubbing of a Kentucky team that, guys, I don't think's all that bad. I know Devin Leary hasn't been great. We'll talk about that in a second. But, I mean, this was just pure and utter domination. And this felt like, guys, this felt like a Georgia team that was really tired of people telling them how not good they are. A Georgia team that was just really sick of hearing that, we shouldn't be number 1. We're not that good. Like, this was a Georgia team that took it personally. 34-7 was the halftime score in this football game. It was over before it started. 34-7. The Dogs dominated. Carson Beck continues his torrid pace, guys. Carson Beck, there's been questions early in the season about, what's happened to Georgia offensively. Guys, Carson Beck is on pace to shatter the single-season passing yards record at Georgia. I think Carson Beck is fine. 28-35, 389 to the air, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. You look at the rushing numbers. Still nothing crazy on the ground, right? Edwards, 9 for 54. Milton, 8 for 47. Heck, Brock Vandegrift was the third leading rusher, 2 for 27. Nothing crazy. It was all through the air for Georgia. And again, they flexed their muscles, both lines of scrimmage. They took away Ray Davis, 15 for 59 for him. McLean had 4 for 21 for Kentucky. Demi Sumo, 2 for 3. I mean, the thing with Kentucky, though, again, it's where is Devin Leary? Like, what happened to Devin Leary? The Devin Leary we heard about all preseason long that, he's got these great weapons of Dane Key and Berrien Brown and this great rushing attack to support him. But 10 for 26, 128, 2 touchdowns, no picks. But I'll say this, guys. As many questions as I have about Kentucky and, what is Kentucky? I think this game was more of a testament to Georgia still for real. Like, Georgia's still that team. Georgia's still the creme de la creme. Georgia is still at the top of the mountain. Until they get beaten, nobody can say otherwise. So I think Kentucky, they got some things to figure out with Mizzou coming to town. But I think Kentucky still is much better than what they showed in that game against Georgia. And, I mean, I know Gamecock fans will point to, well, we only lost by 10. Kentucky lost by – guys, if the transitive property worked like that in college football, there'd be no point in watching any of the remaining games. So I think that was a statement win by Georgia, letting folks know, hey, we have gone nowhere. We are still the beast of the East and the beast of the SEC, hands down. Guys, finally, in Oxford, Ole Miss takes down Arkansas. Final score of 27-20. And poor Sam Pittman, man. Poor Sam Pittman. I hope that Arkansas doesn't do what they might do at season's end. But I tell you what, Dan Enos, he's not the answer, man. He's not the answer at offensive coordinator for the Arkansas Razorbacks. Guys, Rocket Sanders, 8 for 15. 8 carries for 15 yards. What is KJ Jefferson, 17 carries for 11 yards. I know they have problems on the offensive line, but this reminds me so much of South Carolina with Marcus Satterfield last year. It reminds me so much of that, guys. Reminds me so much of it. The offense has got real issues. The whole Dan Enos thing is not working. KJ Jefferson, 25 of 39, 250, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Give credit to Ole Miss, by the way. A nice win at home. Jackson Dart, just 153 yards through the air. But they were able to run the football. Bentley, the 413 for 94. Quinshawn Judkins, 18 for 65. Both of those guys with a touchdown. And, a game in which, again, a gritty SEC West victory. Ole Miss actually Arkansas outscored Ole Miss in the second half, 13-10. But, one of those games where, things can get away from you. Ole Miss, maybe they were overlooking Arkansas, sleepwalking through the game. But no, a tough, hard-fought victory. And then Arkansas, guys, it gets no easier. You got Alabama upcoming this week. I mean, they're just looking for something to feel good about, and it's probably not going to come in the form of the Crimson Tide. So questions in Fayetteville, answers for Ole Miss as they got the big victory over Arkansas, a much-needed win. And now we see as Ole Miss able to build off of this victory as they stay in the SEC West race. Guys, that being said, I mean, that's going to do it for our topics, everything that we have on the docket. Short, sweet, and to the point. Let's see. We did have one question here, a super chat from, I believe, Yerter, who said, did you know that South Carolina's offensive line average height and weight compared to the SEC? I do not know that, Yerter, off the top of my head. But what Yerter did earn was catching my attention and leaving this comment. Yerter continued on and said this: using words like continuity and talent for the offensive line sounds silly to me. Offensive line requires zero talent, and all you got to do is not get beat. Only thing that can explain it to me is size. Yerter, I would highly encourage you to go talk to a former offensive lineman, because offensive line is one of those things. It is the furthest thing from simple. It is one of the more complex positions on the football field. And yes, talent matters. To say it requires zero talent, that's just foolish, man. That's a foolish, uninformed, just come on. Like, to say that it takes no talent to play on the offensive line. Why aren't more guys going to the NFL then? Is it just about size? Size is important. Agility is important. But, I mean, to say it takes no talent to be a good offensive lineman, then what has South Carolina's problem been, Yerter? Because they've been big on the offensive line before. Many times. Many times they've been big enough on the offensive line. Sidney Fugar's 6'8", 370 pounds, and he can't block a lick. Well, what's the reason? It's not size. It's not a size issue. Yes, talent is a real thing on the offensive line. Don't get it twisted. It is. Guys, final thing before we get out of here. My guy, Dave Garrick, in the Big Cock Club Discord says, like it or not, this is a must-win for us. The guys at 107.5 The Game do not think so. I would call South Carolina's game against Florida. I mean, I called it the most important game for months now, guys. I think it's as close to a must-win as a must-win can get. Also announced, guys, before we get out of here, South Carolina's game at Missouri. A 3:30 kickoff in Como. A 3:30 kickoff in Columbia, Missouri. I would say a pretty favorable game. A favorable kickoff time. Right? If you're going to go on the road, at least don't have the game, don't draw the night game. And South Carolina will do that. A 3:30 kick in Como. My guy, Brewer Nation, asking, is the show over? Yeah, Brewer Nation, I mean, the way we're operating now, my friend, there is no Q&A power hour, so we're getting through the show, getting our topics done, and as soon as we do that, the show might run till 2. It may not, but we're not going to fill up dead air with anything unnecessary. So we had Chris Doering in here. Appreciate Chris Doering taking the time. Broke down things I want to see coming out of the bye week. And then, of course, our Monday morning quarterback segment, a lighter Monday simply because of no South Carolina game over the weekend. Not as much to discuss, not as much to talk about. So, again, guys, Gamecocks get that 3:30 kickoff against the Missouri Tigers. And with that being said, we'll talk about all that next week. Tomorrow, guys, we'll start diving into South Carolina and Florida with our SEC power ranking, some of our bets, our keys of the game as well. Then we'll get into key matchups on Wednesday, top storylines, all that good stuff, and lock in predictions on Thursday before our mailbag, our Q&A segment on Friday, taking your questions, your comments, your calls as well. Also want to say thank you to our good friends over at Stadium and Gale, a Florida Gator podcast. They had me on their show this morning. We're also doing some work this week with our good friends over at allkindsofweather.com. You might recall them from baseball season. We're going to talk all things South Carolina, Florida, and that will air on the show this week as well. So really excited for it, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Monday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.